This is brought to you by Subel's Anime Shop. Do you want your dog to be an anime cutie? Let's go to anime! Hello everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of my podcast. By the way, I'm Isabel Medagliada from 11 Cambridge. Are you also curious why there is North and South Korea? And if it is only one state now? Then stay here and I will try to discuss it with you. The topic entitled The 30th Parallel and the Talks for Reunification. After World War II, the Korean War began, leading to the separation of Korea from the two, while North Korea sided with the Soviet Union and China, while South Korea sided with the United States and remained a member of the United Nations. 30th Parallel, popular name given to latitude 38 degree north, that in East Asia roughly demarcates North Korea and South Korea. The line was chosen by U.S. military planners at the Potsdam Conference July 1945. Near the end of World War II, as an army boundary, north of which the USSR was to accept the surrender of Japanese forces in Korea and south, of which the Americans were to accept the Japanese surrender. The line was intended as a temporary division of the country, but the onset of the Cold War led to the establishment of a separate US-oriented regime in South Korea under Syngman Rhee and a communist regime in North Korea under Kim Il-sung. Eventually, an armistice signed in July 1953 brought the Korean War to an end. In total, about 5 million people died in Korean War, including many civilians. The ceasefire line roughly followed the 30th parallel with only minor changes, and the country remains divided along that line still today. After the outbreak of Korean War between North and South Korea in June 1950, United Nations or UN forces, which under U.S. General Douglas MacArthur had come to the aid of the South, moved north of the 30th parallel in an attempt to occupy North Korea, with the intervention of Chinese troops in support of the North. The war came to a stalemate roughly along that parallel. The ceasefire line fixed at the time of the Armistice Agreement gave South Korea possession of an eastern mountainous area north of the parallel, which was the major battlefront when the demarcation line was fixed. Likewise, North Korea was given a roughly triangular portion of territory south of 30th parallel and west of longitude 127 degree east that includes the city of Kaesong. Korean reunification refers to the potential reunification of North Korea and South Korea into a single Korean sovereign state. The process towards reunification was started by the June 15 North-South Joint Declaration in June 2000 and was reaffirmed by the Panmunjom Declaration for Peace, Prosperity, and Unification of the Korean Peninsula in April 2018, and the joint statement of the United States President Donald Trump and North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un at the Singapore Summit in June 2018. In the Panmunjom Declaration, the two countries agreed to work towards a peaceful reunification of Korea in the future. Prior to World War I and Japan's annexation of Korea, all of Korea had been unified as a single state for centuries, known previously as the Goryeo and Joseon dynasties, and the last unified state, the Korean Empire. In 1945, Korea was divided into two countries along the 30th parallel, now the Korean Demilitarized Zone. North Korea was administered by the Soviet Union in the years immediately following the war, with South Korea being managed by the United States. In 1950, North Korea invaded the South, beginning the Korean War, which ended in a stalemate in 1953. Even after the end of the Korean War, reunification proved a challenge as the two countries became increasingly diverse at a steady pace. However, in the late 2010, relations between North and South Korea warmed somewhat. beginning with North Korea's participation at the 2018 Winter Olympics in Yeoncheon Country, Gangwon Province, South Korea. In 2019, South Korean President Moon Jae-in proposed reunification of the two divided states in the Korean Peninsula by 2045. The United States, the People's Republic of China, North Korea, and South Korea agreed to an armistice after 3 years of bloody and frustrating war, bringing the fighting of the Korean War to an end. The armistice ended America's first experiment with the limited war notion of the Cold War. So, despite now being politically separate entities, the governments of North and South Korea have proclaimed the eventual restoration of Korea as a single state as a goal. Thank you for listening to my podcast.